So today we take up the discussion on the next topic, that is union and its territory, which means we are now going to take up a discussion on part 1. This is a part of part 1 of the constitution. It is part of part 1 of the constitution. This is called as union and its territory. Clear? So this is part 1. Part 1 of the constitution. Now, here we are basically going to discuss article 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the constitution. And here we are basically going to describe the nature of Indian Union. We are going to take up the nature of Indian Union and the kind of relationship that it has with its territory, which means the kind of relationship that Union enjoys, and the kind of relationship that Indian Union, constitutionally, what kind of structure that we have. We will try and understand this. Now, let's start with the first article, that is Article 1 of the Constitution. Now, Article 1 of the Constitution says what? Article 1 of the Constitution describes India, that is Bharat. India, that is Bharat, as a union of states. It describes India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. India, that is Bharat, India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. Now, first thing that we need to understand here is this very term, that is India, that is Bharat. Why have we used both? Because India is a reflection of India is a modern term, whereas Bharat is what? Bharat is more of an traditional or ancient concept. Traditional or more ancient in nature. Now, when we are talking about Bharat, there were number of individuals in the Constituent Assembly who had proposed and wanted the name Bharat to be used. On the other hand, there were some who wanted the term India to be used, which means here there was no consensus. No consensus was reached as to whether the term India or whether the term Bharat is to be used. Whether the term India or whether the term Bharat is to be used. There was no consensus on this very idea. And that is the reason. That is the very reason why both the terms were included, that is India, that is Bharat. Both of these terms were included. Clear? The second thing that we need to understand here is the term union of states. The second thing that we need to take up here is the term union of states. Now, this is something that is very important because based on our discussion, based on our last class's discussion, we know India is a federation. India is a federation.
An emergence of the regional powers, that is one of the most important thing. The transformation after the decline of a mighty empire. Basically, what happens in the history, basically, if we see look at the world history, and if we look into the different period of the world history, we will rather see that whenever a mighty empire is being declined, after that there was a political chaos, there was a political instability. But in that case, that kind of political instability didn't take place. We have seen the reason. An emergence of regional state, already we have seen that these provinces, okay, the suvas or provinces, these provinces started becoming independent, and especially emergence of two sorts of states. One is successor state, and other type of states were the rebel states. Okay, so that already we have seen. So three important successor states already we have seen: Awadh, Bengal and Hyderabad. These were three important successor states. Already we have discussed Bengal, that how Bengal, as a case study, I have defined successor states. I told you to remember the definition of the successor states, that states which were founded by the Mughal provincial governor and never formally severed their links with the center and exercised autonomy, that I have told you. And basically that was a step towards decentralization, because Mughal empire and Mughal political system was highly centralized system, and everything was dependent on the Mughal emperor, that is Sultan. And Sultan used to appoint each and every important officers inside his empire in the different provinces, in different districts. Already we have seen. But somehow when this emergence of regional state started, at that time what happened, the centralized system that became gradually a decentralized one. And we have seen the characteristics, especially the characteristics of the successor states. So basic characteristics already you have understood, that I am not formally declaring myself independent, but I am practicing that, but I am not declaring that, and I am keeping the formal relation with the center. That was what. And as a case study, how these formal relations were kept, especially, and how the autonomous power were exercised, or autonomy was exercised. For understanding that, we have seen Bengal as a case study. Okay, so Bengal basically we have seen under Murshid Quli Khan. Actually, Bengal, what happened, Bengal governor Murshid Quli Khan was Diwan in the initial days. He was appointed as Diwan of the Bengal by Aurangzeb, but later Farrukhsiyar, after the death of Aurangzeb, Farrukhsiyar appointed him as Subedar, and he kept both the offices. And that's how already in the last class we have seen that how the balance of power, how the system of check and balance were collapsed, and how this Murshid Quli Khan became very powerful in Bengal. And finally he started becoming independent, okay, coming out of the Mughal control. Already we have seen. But he never severed his formal relation with the Mughal emperor, and he regularly sent revenue. But this regularly sent revenue, and finally we have seen that Murshid Quli Khan, Murshid Quli Khan was the last governor of Bengal who was directly appointed by the center. After that, Murshid Quli Khan himself named who is going to be the next successor, or who is going to be the next governor of Bengal, was basically decided by Murshid Quli Khan. This time there was no direct appointment from the center. Center only gave the rubber stamp. Yes, what you are saying is correct. Okay, so Shujauddin, he became the next governor of Bengal. Basically, governor means at that time ruler, because there was no such kind of power distribution and nothing else. So Shujauddin, he sat on the throne, and finally he endorsed his position by the Mughal Sultan, and finally Alibardi Khan after Shujauddin. And when Alibardi Khan obtained the imperial sanctions and became the final authority of the Bengal, after that Bengal stopped sending revenue as well, and Bengal gradually stopped all the connections with the center. Okay, and that's how Bengal became independent gradually. So this is basically the style of Bengal, the strategy of Bengal, how they became independent. So this is something, a smooth transformation you can understand, instead of any political chaos or any inner revolt or anything else.
The chemical general formula is C6. The chemical general formula is C6H12O5. Clearly visible that it does not satisfy the chemical general formula to be carbohydrate, but it is still a carbohydrate, because on hydrolysis it provides either aldehyde or ketone group. Second statement is like this: it will give energy to human body and can be edible by most of the animals. Hence we can say that these are the two exceptions in case of carbohydrate. First one is rhamnose and second one is acetic acid. There are two exceptions, rhamnose and acetic acid. Whatever you are consuming contains few elements or few amount of carbohydrates, you can say. Either you are consuming chapati or you are consuming boiled rice, they contains carbohydrates in majority. Hence, the quantity you are consuming for carbohydrate is more as compared to protective element. There is a one statement in English language known as an apple a day takes doctor away. Takes doctor away means apple is nothing but just protecting your body from various kind of diseases and disorders. While on the other hand, carbohydrate like chapati and rice are not going to protect you from any kind of disease or disorder. Mind my words. They are not going to protect you from any kind of disease or disorder. While on the other hand, you are consuming chapati or rice, or you can say carbohydrate in higher quantity as compared to apple. You are not going to consume, you are not consuming 5 kg of apple in a day. Huh? या करता है कोई ऐसा? While on the other hand, you can consume at least 250 grams of rice, or you can say 250 grams of wheat per day. That is higher quantity, na? Hence, it proves कि जो आपका बॉडी है, आई टोल्ड यू अर्लियर कि 80 to 85% is made up of simply hydrocarbons.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all well at your end. And please do take care of your health. Prima facie because of this COVID pandemic, right? So let's move forward. And yesterday, what we had seen is nothing but an overview about the science and technology as a subject, its contribution, its significance, its role, as far as the 3 stages of the examination is concerned. Like how it is going to help us as far as the prelims part is concerned or the objective testing. Then what is its utility or contribution in mains, that is nothing but the descriptive part of paper 3, and then at last supplementing the things with the current affairs so that it can help us to go ahead with answering any questions if they are being asked in your interview stage of the examination. All right, so that's how we have started, and the approach was very clear how we are going to move about. We are taking every topic, keeping the thing in the back of mind that the student fraternity who is watching this video or listening to the classes, we are assuming that they are not from science background, and that's what we are trying to bring them at par with the people or the respected students who are from science background, especially engineering, medicine, and the other general science graduates. So that is the one thing we had kept in mind, and the other thing I hope when you had seen the yesterday's class, then you might have got an idea that we are picking up the things right from the basic. First, we are starting with the introduction of a particular topic so that to make you familiar with the topic per se, and then slowly we are entering into the definition, meaning, objectives, historical perspective, the various institutions and organizations involved in that. And then probably we had looked into the policies, programs, or the key institutions in policy making and policy implementation like that. So that is what our approach, which is going to be uniform, as I've told you yesterday also. The baseline would be very same. Every information important for prelims perspective, mains perspective, and from the interview perspective. So that's how we are going to take on to the things. And now let's enter into the actual components or the modules of science and technology. And to begin with, as I've told you yesterday, that we had divided the whole segment into three most important verticals. Their importance wise, first is strategic, second is the advanced technology, and third we are going to talk about the literature oriented or informatory technology. So I think without delaying further, what we can do, you can move on with the topic, and let's take up the first one, that is nothing but the strategic technology. So when we talk about strategic technology, as I've told you already, we got acquainted with the term called science and technology, and out of the three, what we are starting now is the first one, that is nothing but the strategic technology. So when we talk about the strategic technology, now you know the meaning of strategic technology, what exactly the strategic technology means, and very simply you can relate it with two things: any technology which have the very important contribution as far as the social and economic development, so socio-economic development of the country is concerned, and secondly, it is nothing but something which contributes into the security of the country, right? So security of the nation or country, whatever term you want to use, you can use, but the two words which you need to remember, one is security, other is development. So what is the strategic technology? Any technology which have a dual role to play as far as the two terms are concerned. One, promoting the development, especially with respect to social and economic development, and the other is nothing but security aspects. That is, what I can say is nothing but related with internal as well as external security, which includes sovereignty, territorial integrity, etc., security of the resources, population, and so on. Moving further, we had seen yesterday that in the strategic part or strategic technology, we are going to get acquainted with three technologies. First, we are going to talk about something called space technology, right? Then we are going to talk about the second one, that is nothing but the nuclear technology. And third, we are going to talk about another important technology, that is nothing but defense technology.
To second chapter. Second chapter is national income. Second chapter is national income. Now, I have already given you the definition of what is factors of production, right? Now, let me tell you something else. It is final goods and intermediate goods. Final goods and intermediate goods. Suppose a person he goes to market and he buys 1 kg of tomatoes for 40 rupees. So value of tomatoes is 40 rupees per kg. So he is buying 1 kg tomatoes for 40 rupees. He brings those tomatoes home, makes a salad and eats it. Alright. Second case. This is case 1. Case 2 is he brings the tomatoes home. From these tomatoes, this time he makes sauce and sells that sauce in the market for 100 rupees. Alright. Now in this case, what happened is, in the case 1, in this case, here the tomatoes are used for consumption purposes. The tomatoes are used for consumption purpose. So not purposes, consumption purpose. While in the second case, the tomatoes are used to produce another good. So tomatoes are used to produce another good. Fair enough. Now, when the tomatoes are used for consumption purposes, that time the tomatoes will be the final goods. And when the tomatoes are used to produce another good, that time the tomatoes will be the intermediate goods.
In this topic, what we will see here the different kind of motion of earth, कि कैसे कैसे अर्थ मूव करती है, तो देखेंगे हम। और उसके बाद हम ये देखेंगे कि ये मोशन ऑफ अर्थ जो है हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है? What is its importance? Actually, it is having a huge importance. Huge importance means formation of day and night. We will see over here. Then the coming and going of season, winter, summer, monsoon, that we will see over here. And even the increase and decrease in the length of day and night, that we are going to see over here. तो ये कुछ चीजें जो आज हमें इसके सिस्टम में डिस्कस करनी है मोशन ऑफ अर्थ। तो जब भी मोशन की बात आती है तो मोशन का मतलब क्या होता है? What do you mean by this term motion? Motion मतलब suppose I am standing here and I am going here and there again आप देख रहे हैं कि मैं घूम रहा हूँ कुछ देर से। So my purpose is not to lose out weight. My purpose is just to make you understand now. So, but this is also motion. So motion simply means anything is moving related to the other thing. Suppose ये जो भी आप रिकॉर्डिंग कर रहे हैं, आप स्टूडेंट्स बैठे हैं, आप लोग बैठे हैं और मैं मूव कर रहा हूं, तो what does it mean? I am moving related to you. But suppose we both are sitting in a train in front of each other, then with relation with each other, related to each other, we are not moving at all. समझ रहे हैं? नहीं समझ रहे? Motion is always in with respect to anything. With respect to anything. Something is over there, and that something is moving relative to it. भाई आप अगर हम दोनों ट्रेन में बैठे हैं with relative to each other हम मूव नहीं कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो रेहड़ी वाला बाहर पकौड़े बेच रहा है उसके रिलेशन में तो हम मूव कर रहे हैं ना, we are in motion. So it may be possible with respect to one of the person the thing is not at in motion, but with respect to the other it can be in motion. For example, मैं कह रहा हूँ motion of earth, but I am itself standing on the earth. How earth is moving? मैं खुद खड़ा हूँ, मैं कह रहा हूँ I am stationary and earth is moving. How can it be possible? But actually earth is moving in relation with the other planets, not with respect to me or you. It is with respect to the other planets. That's why I am talking about the motion of the earth. The motion of earth, there are two types of motion. One is rotation, another is revolution. So who will let me know? आप बताइए, कोई बताए, कौन बताएगा मुझे कि रोटेशन क्या है, रेवोल्यूशन क्या है, डिफरेंस क्या है? चलो मैं ही बता देता हूँ. देखो, wait for a minute. See, this slide, this I will move this disc in two ways. One is, are you able to see? It is rotating. See, this is rotating like this. Okay. This is known as rotation. Why rotation? Because on its axis it is rotating. Getting it or not? Sorry. It is rotating on its axis. And now another thing is, this is also the motion of this. It is named as revolution. Now it is revolving with respect to something, center. It is not with respect to its axis. So rotation is with respect to its axis. See here. Here you can see earth is rotating with respect to its axis. And this is also the one of the motion of earth. This is known as revolution. When earth is moving with respect to the sun, it is named as revolution. And when earth is moving on its axis, it will be named as rotation. Clear है नहीं?
Question is, what is disaster? If we are going to study disaster management, then first and the foremost question which came in our mind is, भाई होता क्या है disaster? What do you mean by disaster? When we will become aware that this is the thing which is known as disaster, then only we can manage it. Yes or no? Then only we can manage it. So the word disaster is originated from a French word disastrous, disaster. Disaster is a combination of two words, that is des and ester. It is a combination of two words, des and ester, making disaster. Des word means bad, something which is not good. Des means bad, bad experience. Des means something which is bad. And ester means star. Ester means star. A bad star. What does it mean? A condition which is very bad, but it is grooming, increasing, shining, growing. It is named as disaster. The condition which is not good, it is bad, but it is uplifting itself, grooming. That's why it is named as disaster. So in total, if I want to define disaster, listen to me, we will discuss some groceries of geography, under which we will discuss certain terminology. For example, physiography, lithosphere, atmosphere. We will discuss certain lot of definition over there. But what I want is, And what is the purpose of discussing these all things? Like I'm giving you a definition of disaster. Listen, you are aware when you are listening the word disaster, you are aware that what is disaster. But it becomes complicated when you start writing and defining disaster. If I will say now to you that define disaster, then it will become complicated to you to put them in a formalized word. To put them in a formalized word become complicated. But while doing answer writing, it is necessary to have a knowledge about the formalized word. Then only you can perform better in your mains examination. That's why we must have definition for certain key words of your syllabus. So I will request you all, not related to geography, but related to everything. In economics, when you will study economics, repo rate, reverse repo rate, something of that kind. So whenever any terminology which is coming in between in the form of your syllabus, you must have a definition, a solid definition of that particular word. So that when question came over that, then you can finally answer that question. Right or not? Let's see. So disaster can easily be defined as a serious disruption in the functioning of a community or a society. What is? It is a serious disruption. What kind of disruption? In the functioning of a community or a society, causing widespread material, economical, social, environmental losses. What it will cause? Economical, social and environmental loss it will cause, which automatically exceed the ability of affected society to cope up using its own resources. Getting it or not? What it will do? It will create a disruption in the normal life of a people. What disaster means? Disaster simply means it will create disruption in the normal life of a people. And automatically if they are getting affected by it, their normal life is getting hampered by disaster, then they will be building capability to maintain everything with the resources whichever is left behind. Right or not? That is named as disaster.
This is also a representation diagram. So this is individual. There is only one antelope and it is population. This is like combination of different antelopes. They belongs to the same species. That's why it's called a population. And community. Here there is antelope, there is a bird, there is a hare, there is a fox. So the combination of all these different species is called a community. And what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is nothing but you add biotic components as well as abiotic components like atmosphere, water, soil. So this becomes a ecosystem. And if you combine different ecosystems in a vast area, it becomes a biome. So here they have given the example of taiga biome. And biosphere is a combination of all biomes. So this is the hierarchical order of analyzing ecosystems as well as ecology. You need to remember this one. And then all these biomes are generally named after the dominant vegetation present in that biome. Suppose if you take a grassland, entire grassland is a biome, but they keep the name of grassland. Why? Because grass is the dominant species in that particular ecosystem. If you take taiga, we will discuss about taiga later. Taiga is filled by taiga trees and that entire biome is named after that particular vegetation. That's why it is very important to study about vegetation, that is plant species. So if you consider plant species, there is a concept called transpiration. We need to learn deeply about transpiration. Then only we can understand why different trees exist at different climatic conditions. So suppose if you take a tree, it takes water from its roots. and then this water flows through its trunk and through its branches, and then it enters leaves. Okay, this is the general idea. But how does this water flow from this part to this part against gravity? Because gravity acts in this direction and water is flowing in completely opposite direction. Generally for humans, we drink water from our mouth and it just flows down through gravity. And blood inside us flows through different body parts through the pumping mechanism of heart. But a tree doesn't have any heart. It doesn't have any sophisticated mechanism to supply water as well as minerals. So the procedure it can pump water is, so it sucks water through diffusion, through capillary action. Capillary action. So once water moves through these leaves, it releases the water into the atmosphere from its stomata. So water is coming like this and it is also going outside leaves. So it is going like this as well as coming out. So there is a continuous pumping mechanism going on. It creates one kind of suction pressure. So that's why it can absorb water again and again from the roots. So this is like a necessary evil for the tree. It needs to send that water away to absorb even more water as well as more minerals. So this is called transpiration.
I'm Dr. S.K. Jha, and today I'm starting with your paper, Internal Security of India. I've been teaching civil services students for last more than 28 years, and primarily my subjects are international relations, internal security, and ethics. When we talk about internal security, what we have in mind, what we have in mind, whenever you use the word security, means there is a threat perception. We are perceiving some threat from some corner, maybe from some external source, maybe from internal source. But internal security, whenever we use the word security, it is directly related to a security threat, or there is a perception of a threat from some corners, maybe from some internal source, maybe from external source, but we perceive a threat. Now, why internal security is very important component of civil services? Internal security is a very important component for civil services because after qualifying civil services examination, you are going to be a part of the administrative network, entire administrative network of the country. And in that context, you have to be responsible for maintaining the system. You have to be responsible for maintaining the setup, entire setup for the country. You are also responsible for maintaining an order in the society. Because if there is no order in the society, if there is no stability in the society, if there is no sense of security among the people in this country, then nothing will work. So, the reason why internal security has been introduced as an important component of the syllabus is primarily on account of the fact that you are, after qualifying civil service examination, you are going to be part of the entire administrative setup and you are responsible for maintaining the system. You are responsible for maintaining the government. You are responsible for ensuring proper governance in this country. And there cannot be any proper governance without maintaining a security structure of this country. So that is why it has been introduced as an important component of the civil services syllabus. Now, when we talk about security, what we have in mind? We have in mind the two components. One is internal component of the security, and then what we have in mind is the external component of the security. There are two aspects of security. One is internal and another is external. When there is a threat from within, when there is a threat from within means within the territorial boundary of the country, within territorial jurisdiction of the country, we call it internal security. But when there is a threat from outside the territorial boundaries of your country, we call it external security.
Today we will be discussing international relation. International relation is a subject which is one of the popular subjects in UPSC, and it is a very useful subject because it is very important for people who take up political science as well as for students who want to do well in general study. The point to remember as we approach international relation is that it is a subject which is dynamic in nature. It means that the subject is changing constantly. It is not always historical in nature, but always contemporary. And the nature of the examination that UPSC requires is that the student should understand this subject as a person who is supposed to be aware of his surroundings, what is happening in and around India. You're not supposed to be an expert, but the nature and the aim and objective of UPSC is that you should have a knowledge which is sufficient for a civil servant who is well educated, but he should not be a specialist. So because there is no requirement for a specialist, the requirement is for a person who is well educated and who should understand the events in and around India, what is happening around the world, and how does those events impact India and India's national interest. That is the key aim and objective of the UPSC when they set the question paper. So, what is the key aim? If you look at the key aim of the civil service examination, the first is that the relevance of that knowledge to a civil servant. People who are going into this service, they should be able to have the potential to understand what is happening in and around the country and how those events impact India's national interests. So, therefore, the first requirement is that the candidate should be able to analyze conflicting socio-economic goals and objectives for India as far as possible. They should understand what are the conflicting events taking.
We'll begin with the most important section at this point of time. Not only most important, but very crucial section for Indian society, that is the erstwhile mentioned Dalits. The nomenclature, please understand when we say this, that they are a very important section of our society, whereby we mean to say that we don't want any section of our society to be left behind. So government or nation as such has this added responsibility upon them, thrust upon them, that everyone should be taken together. In what spheres? In the spheres of, this is enshrined in our preamble, that we should give social, economic and political representation to them, and of course social justice, economic opportunities and political participation in the process of nation building. Now, this is a very important case with respect to study of not only our Indian society, but it also becomes a very important study of our Indian history. Sometimes both of them mix together, and that is what you'll be studying here at this point of time. So when we say, let me first deal with the issue of the nomenclature. That's a very important subject with respect to Dalits. So when we use this word, we all are very familiar
that the other synonyms of Dalits may go as SCs, scheduled castes. Scheduled tribes are also there, but don't confuse them with Dalits. They are coming under the group of tribals. They are different. Okay, so they have, of course, stated protection of the state, but that will be a different discussion for us at this point of time. Right now, we are concerned with the scheduled castes, the erstwhile Dalits. As we have mentioned in lectures before, the plight of Dalit was nothing very new to the Indian population and to the Indian imagination. We knew that a lot of atrocities have been committed to them, on them, in the names of religious hierarchies, in the names of caste hierarchies, in the names of their occupation, and unfortunately in the name of their birth, that by birth they are supposed to be deprived. Now, having a long history of deprivation, discrimination does play a lot of part in our present times. So when we say present times, with respect to our studies here, we say colonial history. We say that the colonial time period, that is when the Britishers started coming up. And they of course came here as traders. We shall not go much into detail how the Britishers came or what was their agenda. That is a topic reserved for your other class. But just an overview here, that they indeed came as traders, right? Started, of course, the first to come were Portuguese, then Dutch, then British, then French. With respect to Britishers, they established their hold. They started trading in India. One of the first delegations that came, Thomas Roe's delegation to Jahangir's court, Mughal Emperor Jahangir's court, starting from 1600, making their headway in areas like Surat, Masulipatanam, etc. They were completely traders. They had profit motive, right? But from time period of 1600 to from 1750s, you have 1756 battle, 57 battle of Plassey, very important. But by 1750s, in a very crude representation of timeline, from traders, they were starting to become what you call as political masters. Even before that, right? And later on, this veil of trading and political upmanship was removed, lifted from 1857 onwards, when the direct rule of crown was there in India. We all know this because of the rebellion. The East India Company's monopoly of trade was long vanquished, was long removed in 1813 only. But the political hold of East India Company was removed in 1857. Don't worry about the dates, don't worry about the timeline. I'm just giving you a very crude representation of what happens. But from 1857 onwards, when the British Empire started ruling directly, that is the direct rule of the British Empire, they wanted to also meddle and create some political issues. And Dalit becomes, or this group of deprived section becomes a very important tool for them to politicize, right? So thereby, the nomenclature at that point, at those points of times, were different. So Dalit was one. Depressed class, they were always mentioned as depressed. Baba Sahib Ambedkar happened to form All India Depressed Class Associations. MC Raja, a very important, again, Dalit leader, Babu Jagjeevan Ram, they had all used this nomenclature, that is depressed class. The word SCs was used, that is the scheduling of those castes. Now, this is a very important, should I say, political innovation by the Britishers. They wanted to schedule a particular group of caste, and hereby Dalits. A very simple corollary to this fact would be where, in what form, what are you scheduling? You are giving some privilege. A privilege, or you're giving some affirmative action on behalf of state.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, now we start with the first topic itself, the topic called as attitude. Now, the topic is called as attitude. Now, when I say attitude, what are the things that are mentioned in the syllabus here? The syllabus says content of attitude, structure of attitude, functions of attitudes, its influence and relation with thought and behavior, moral and political attitudes, social influence and persuasion. This is basically what the syllabus says. देखो, अगर आप सिलेबस देखोगे ना, so you will understand that this is not the first topic that is mentioned in your syllabus. In fact, what I have done is, as per our previous discussions, I have classified the syllabus. So the first topic or the first part of our discussion would be related to the psychological aspects of ethics. So first we are going to deal with attitude, we are going to deal with emotional intelligence. These two will be the first topics that we deal with. Then we will move on to the administrative ethics part, and we are going to take up the philosophical ethics part, wherein we are going to discuss the values and some part of probity in governance, and then we will move on. So this is the way I go through this, because if you see the very first topic of ethics, it is too technical and you will not necessarily be able to understand it at the first go. So the very first topic is the very last topic that we discuss. It's the very last topic that we discuss. Okay? So this is something that we need to look into. What will be the pattern of our discussion? The pattern of our discussion would be, we are first going to look at all these topics, and finally we are going to look at the previous year papers, including some case studies on it. Clear? So what is ethics? A simple definition of ethics is that it is a psychological tendency which is expressed by evaluating a particular object with some degree of favor or disfavor. That means whenever it is a psychological tendency that we have. What are attitudes? It is a psychological, attitudes are psychological tendencies that we have. How do we express those tendencies? By evaluating a particular object with some degree of favor or disfavor. With some degree of favor or disfavor. Clear? So objects with some degree of favor or disfavor. With some degree of favor or disfavor. So this is what attitude can be defined as.
Discussing about principles of essay, and two important principles were left. We are continuing from that. So the idea was that it should be logical. We have done till here, that is, you have to give examples to make it constructive, and of course have a balanced approach. But what is more important is that it should be logical, effective and concise. Remember that line of UPSC notification that said that credit will be given to effective and exact expressions. So when you effectively try to express your ideas, that means what? You have to be concise, at the same point of time use very to the point, logical verbs, adverbs, even quotes. We will deal in detail how to start with quote, or which are the various ways to start an introduction, body and then conclusion. That will come in the due course of this class itself. So in the first lecture we spent a lot of time dealing about what is an essay, what is expected out of you in an essay, and what does the notification say, that is from the horse's mouth itself. And now you have to deal with how do you even start. For that, identification of topics, understanding of topics, and then making yourself prepared for writing an essay is all the very necessary prerequisites that are essential. When I say these prerequisites, what are these? I will go about in detail. That is the mandate of this lecture. You will get to know the difference between what do you call as topics and areas, and a candidate should always prepare areas rather than going for the topics. What you get in exam is indeed topic, but what you should rather prepare during the course of your examination or preparation is that you should be well aware with the areas. What is the difference between two? We will delve that into this lecture, and after doing that we will see some of the sources from where to read, because as I told you, please remember this sentence of mine. Don't think that from the first day itself you have to start writing. In order to know what to write, you should know what to read first, because reading is the very bare essential that you will get to know in order to prepare your fodder material. Fodder material, if I tell you, means the material that, you know, fodder for example, you provide food grain fodders to livestock, etc. Like that, fodder material for your essays. In order to do that, in order to have that fodder material, you should first read yourself good quality essays. From where should you read and how you should read, that also we will delve. And then later on, we will see how to actually structure your essay. That is intro, body and conclusion. So this is the mandate of this lecture. We shall see how to do it. So pay attention, we are just continuing two important points. This we have already dwelt on a very deep scale, that what do you call as effective and exact expression. So coming to the next important slide is how to read.
The following table gives the percentage of the marks, okay, obtained by 7 students in 6 different subjects in an examination. The number in the bracket gives the maximum marks in each subject. So it means, beta, maths exam is of 150 marks, and what does this 90 represent? Is he getting 90 marks out of 150, or is it 90% of 150? So because question says that the following table gives the percentage, these values are already in the percentage form. Okay, fine, good. So now I'll ask some questions. First question, what is total score of Ayush? Find the total score of Ayush. Try this. Total score of Ayush. In maths, Ayush got 90%. So beta, what is 90% of 150? 90% of 150. So 52 za, 53 za, 53 za, sorry, 245 za, 45 into 3, 135. I hope it is clear. Fine, beta. So similarly, we have to find score of Ayush in all the subjects and then add it. So my question was, what was Ayush's total score? So 90% of 150 is 135. Plus Ayush's score in chemistry is 50% of 130. 50% is half of this, that is 65 marks. And in physics, 90% of 120, 90 upon 100 into 120, 108 marks. Then geography is of 100 marks and person got 60%, that is 60 marks. History exam is of 60 marks and person got 70%. So 70% of this is how much? 42. Computer science is of 40 marks and person got 80% of that, that is 32 marks. So if you add these, you will get the total score of Ayush. Fine. So in a hurry, if the student don't read this part, then what do? They simply add these numbers. That is wrong because these are the percentage values. Fine, beta. So you have to do like that. Next question. Hanji. What is Tarun's average score in, not Tarun, what is Tanvi's average score? What is Tanvi's average score in geography? What is Tanvi's average score in history and computer science? Try this. Tanvi's average score in history and computer science. What is her average of history and computer science? Tanvi, you have to look for Tanvi. Tanvi's score in history, Tanvi's score in computer science. Take the average of these two subjects. Tanvi's average score of these two subjects. Hanji beta. What common mistake students do? They will take the average of 40 and 60. That is wrong. Or is it correct? That is wrong. Why wrong? Because here the marks of history and computer science are different. So you cannot take the average, simple average of 40 and 60. So you have to find what is her total score of these two subjects divided by, this is of out of how many marks. Okay. Don't simply say that there are two subjects, so that's why we are dividing by 2. So aggregate percentage or average percentage, that is same thing. So in history, she got 40% of 60. What is 40% of 60? 40 upon 100 into 60. You can directly write 24 also. Here 60% of 40. 60% of 40. So this is the score divided by this exam. These exams are of how many marks? 60 plus 40 marks, and we have to find the percentage value. So multiply it by 100. Fine. So you might have got confused here. So what I am doing? I am finding her score in history. 40% of 60 is 24 marks, and here 60% of 40 is 24 marks. She got 24 marks in history, 24 in computer science. It means she is getting 48 marks. Out of how many marks? 60 marks here, 40 marks here. So divide by 100. She is getting 48 marks out of 100 marks. What is the percentage score? Answer is 48%. Fine, beta.